Today on Fit Tip Tuesday, I'm going to share the differences between adjusting your bodice pattern for a forward ball of your shoulder versus a forward neck. This was a question that I found buried in some responses on an old question, so I thought it would be kind of cool to do one video to show these two different adjustments so you can compare and contrast what's going on, because actually what you're doing is you're adjusting the opposite ends of the shoulder seam for each adjustment. And when you're working with the forward ball of your shoulder, you have to adjust your sleeve as well. So I want to show you all of this in this fun Fit Tip Tuesday. Let's start with a front and back. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to show you how to adjust for a forward ball of your shoulder. And I'm going to use two different methods to adjust the front and back pattern piece, because in the front, the slash and spread method is really quick and easy, but in the back, it gets a little complicated, so I'm going to use within the seam allowance method. So there's basically three methods to adjusting a pattern: slash and spread, pivot slide, and the seam allowance method. So I'm going to use seam allowance and slash and spread to show you these things. So let's start with the front shoulder. Now, what happens when you have a forward shoulder? That means the ball of your shoulder is sitting more forward. Okay, so it actually slopes forward of your neck. So the way you would want to fix that is, if your ball of your shoulder is forward, the distance or the length needs to be shortened here because it's more forward, and then lengthened in the back so the back shoulder seam can reach to the front that's more forward. The front adjustment is pretty easy. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to draw myself a guideline. I'm going to draw this guideline and this guideline like this. And I'm going to make pivots on all the edges. There's going to be a pivot at the shoulder seam at the neck, at the tip of the shoulder, and over here near the front notch. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to slash the pattern, and I'm going to slash here, and I'm going to make pivots so I can actually move these things. So I'm slashing to but not through, and what I'm going to do now is I'm physically going to push the tip of the shoulder down by pulling it down like this. Now I'm working with a tiny half scale pattern, so I can't really pull it down very much, but you can see I can pull these two pieces down like this, and you can see what's happening is they're overlapping. And if I put them back, whoops, I broke my little hinge there. So you essentially push it in, and I'm going to break it apart so you can see what I'm doing. So I'm going to take this part of the shoulder, I'm going to push it down like this, the amount that I need. So let's pretend that's a 1/2 inch in real life that I'm shortening here. And I'm just going to stick a piece of tape. Now what I'm not changing is the length of the shoulder because I'm pivoting up here on the corner. Okay, and then I'm going to take this piece that I broke off and reattach it, and I'm essentially going to pivot this down like this. Okay, and so you can see what happens is when I put all the pivot points back together, I push it down like that. I'm just going to take that into place here. Okay, you can see what has happened is the pattern is now overlapping within the pattern, and I'm just going to color in the overlap. So it's overlapping right here and right here, like this. Okay, and if I put a little colored Post-it note under it, you can see that it does open a little bit there, but that's compensating for the fact that we pushed this one this way and that one that way a little bit. So basically now you can see we have pushed the shoulder down and we've created a a shorter shoulder. And what I think I'm going to do here is let me cut this out, and I'm going to compare it to the original pattern so you can see what it does here. So you're going to see I didn't change anything except lowering that tip of that shoulder. I'll just get another pattern here. Now watch when I line this up. Okay, so you can see what's happening is here I lined up the center front, the underarm seam. You can see all it did was lower the shoulder where we need it to be shorter for a forward ball of the shoulder. Now, what about the back? The back needs to be lengthened. So again, I'm going to use the seam allowance method. So I'm just going to dash in seam allowances here. We're going to pretend I'm being super accurate. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to lift up this part. And what that's going to cause is it's going to cause the shoulder to come up the amount that I lowered the shoulder here. Now the difference between what I'm going to do in the front versus the back, if we look at the front one more time, I didn't change the length of my armhole in the front. All I did was pivot it at this point right here. I didn't change it. But in the back, we are going to change it. So watch what happens. I'm literally going to cut my seam allowance. And I'm going to cut my seam allowance over here like this. And I'm going to create a pivot at the top. And I'm going to cut through my armhole here. So what this is going to allow me to do is it's going to allow me to pick this up. Oh, I have to create a pivot over here too. It's going to allow me to pick this up within the pattern like this to lift it up. Now notice what's happening. I'm going to put my pink Post-it note underneath there so you can see what's happening. But basically what's happening here is we pivoted this up at the tip of the shoulder like this. And it's going to slide up like this. Now notice what's happening here. I've pivoted it up, but let's look and see what I really changed. Okay, I didn't change the length of the shoulder because I left that alone, but I did change the length of the back armhole. So see what's happening here is I'm just going to have to do just a little bit of a truing up to get that to be nice. I'm going to have to adjust my sleeve this amount because I've made the back armhole longer as well. And we're going to say that that's, let's say that that's a 1/4 inch. We're going to have to involve the sleeve. But before we do that, let me just cut this out so you can see how it looks. Cut this down. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put the shoulders together so you can see the shape. So you can see now if I put these together, you can see what we did was we pulled down, let's do it like this. We pulled down the front and we picked up the back. And that's going to shift the whole shoulder seam at the tip of the shoulder forward. So let me show you how to adjust the sleeve. Now, what did we do here? We did not add ease per se, but what we did was we actually increased the height of the sleeve. The cap height has to go from the tip of the shoulder down to the armhole. So what I'm going to do here is I'm literally going to cut and just increase the cap height on the backside only, an equal amount to what I lengthened the armhole. I'm going to make myself a little guideline. It's just going to be a real simple little, sort of in the middle between the shoulder notch and the back armhole. I'm just going to make myself a little guide like this. And then I'm going to have it go right into the cap, like at the notch or above the notch. This is a tiny half scale pattern, so you probably could get this guide to be a little bit above the notch on a full size pattern. But basically what I'm going to do here is I am going to cut cut this. I'm going to pivot at the cap. So I'm going to create a pivot at the cap, but I'm going to cut through near the notch like this. And now I'm going to spread this the amount I need. And I'm just going to take, again, a little piece of, I think I can reuse this part of my Post-it note here, just to put some pink in there. So basically, I'm just going to pivot this open the amount that I need. And it has to equal the amount that I did here. Okay. And then I'm going to tape that. And then, of course, we're just going to need to true that up a little bit. So you can see I'm going to just add a little bit below and trim a little bit above just to make a nice smooth cap edge here. All right, so that's how you adjust the back cap to go with the fact that you actually lengthen the back armhole to lift the tip of the shoulder in the back, versus in the front, we really didn't change the front so much. But having said that, you want to walk the sleeve to make sure the ease is the same. So I'm literally going to put my, let me just move this out of the way here. So in the front, I'm just going to walk the front armhole into the front sleeve cap like this. And I'm just going to pivot it until I get to the top. Okay, so you can see my front armhole is actually not making it to the notch. Even though we didn't physically change the length of the armhole, it is a little bit smaller because we did stick it in. So this is why you have to check. So there's where my front stops. I'll put a little F there. And then my back, again, I'm just going to start, I'm going to walk the cap, or the armhole, right along the cap here. And notice I'm pivoting the armhole along the seam allowance, not the edge. Okay, so you can see here, if I get rid of that seam allowance, oops. Okay, that's going to stop right where the notch is. Okay, so my back is here and my front is here. So I don't need to change the length of my front cap, but I do need to change the notch, because now that I've lengthened my back, the back armhole extends to the actual notch, the original position of the notch. So my new notch is going to be the middle of where my front armhole stops and my back. So in the middle is right here. So that's the new notch. So you don't need to really play with the front armhole so much. It's just we're sliding more of the cap in the back versus the shorter amount in the front. That's how you do a forward ball of your shoulder. So how does this compare to a forward neck? Essentially, we're going to be doing the same thing. We're going to be shortening the front and lengthening the back, but we're going to be doing it on the opposite side of the shoulder seam. So just to look at this one more time, just put a piece of tape here. Okay, so you can see we adjusted the tips of the shoulder and also the sleeve to do the forward shoulder. Now to do the forward neck, I'm going to use slash and spread for both of these, because the slash and spread method is, pretty easy for this. What we're going to do, let's start with the back this time. So in the back, we want to lengthen. So we're going to start by drawing just a simple guideline, and I'm going to do it from the tip of the shoulder to the neck like this. Okay, and essentially what I'm going to do here is I am going to slash here, and I'm going to make a pivot at the tip of the shoulder, and you can see what that's going to allow me to do is it's going to allow me to lift up the shoulder at the base of the neck and the back. And I'll just put myself a little pink post-it note here so you can see. Oops. So we're just going to lift this up the amount we need. And what that's doing is it's giving us a deeper little bit of neckline to get up to that forward position like this, right? And then in the front, we want to shorten. Now in the front, what we're going to do is we're going to actually, we want to lower the entire neckline. So this is going to look a little bit funky, but I'm going to go from the tip of the shoulder seam at the neckline to the base of the neckline here. And then I'm also going to go from here to the tip of the shoulder. This looks a little crazy, but you're going to see what's going to happen. I'm going to create a pivot here. I'm going to create a pivot here. And I'm going to allow this to open. So what's going to happen is we want to lower not just the shoulder, but we also want to lower the neckline a little bit, making this shorter. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut through here. I'm going to cut up here and make a pivot. And I'm going to cut through here and I'm going to make a pivot. So see what this is going to allow me to do now is it's going to allow me to, oh, let me make a pivot right here. So watch what happens. I'm going to lower it a like amount. So I'm just going to make a guideline here so you can see. So that's where I'm going to lower it to, that line right there. So if I lower the neckline, everything else will drag along with me. Watch. It looks complicated, but it's really not. So see how if I make a pivot here and here, this is cut, pivot, pivot, this is cut through. If I just pick up this one piece and slide it down, everything else follows. Now what might happen is the top of your neckline might stick out a little bit more than its original position, but you can just trim that back off. So basically, I'm just going to take this whole thing into position, and you can see this little bit right here is sticking out, so I'm just going to just true that back up, okay? But that's how you lower the shoulder at the neckline to agree with lengthening it in the back. And again, I'm just going to cut this out so you can see. Okay. All right, so I'm just going to stick this one next to this one so you can kind of see what's happening here. You can see that we created a shift in the pieces. We added length in the back to allow it to come up, and we shortened the front to take up that extra that you don't need because your neck is a little bit forward of your shoulders. So that's how you adjust for a forward neck. So the cool thing is, if you're doing a forward neck, you can see that that does not affect the sleeve at all. So let me just tidy this up a little bit. Okay, so, all right, so that's a little bit more tidy. All right, so you can see that this has nothing to do with the sleeve, so you do not need to worry about the sleeve. So I think this is a fun comparison. I don't know if I can show them to you all at once here. Let me see if I can get... Okay, so here we have our, oops, let's cut this. Okay, so here we have forward fall of the shoulder, and I'll put them like this. okay, versus a forward neckline. Okay, so you can see on this one, all the adjusting is along the armhole side, and on this one, all the adjusting is on the neckline side. That's how you adjust for the forward shoulder versus a forward neck. And don't forget, if you do a forward shoulder, adjust your back and then walk it and adjust your shoulder notch. All right, so I think this is a really fun comparison. Thank you guys so much for watching. I am in Kentucky teaching at the Master Volunteer in Clothing Construction program for the University of Kentucky this week, but I will be back in time for FabFit Friday. So join me on Friday at 1 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. I'll give you a peek at all the fun I had during the week, and then I'm starting to think about a bias top with a sleeve. That's what we're doing on FabFit Friday. Thank you guys so much for watching, and have a wonderful rest of your day.